Okay, guys, welcome. This week we are going to be discussing week six's course content, which is middle childhood, and we're going to be touching on, of course, the Ericksonian crises and resolutions of this stage, as well as Havinghurst's tasks. We're going to be touching also on Piaget's concrete operations stage, which is what we're moving into in this age group, as well as Piaget's theory of moral development. So it's not just Kohlberg that we're talking about in terms of moral development. Piaget also has a theory as well. And we're also going to be talking about the importance of social and peer relationships in the development of a child of this age. So in terms of Havinghurst's tasks, when you think about a child this age, you're thinking about them, developing who they are, sort of independent of the family, in their social contexts. They're in school, so they're kind of learning the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic. They're kind of coming into their own with sports and physical activities, so they're really developing their physical skills as well. So if you think about it, it all kind of really comes down to a couple of things: friendship, social relationships, developing their concrete operations, which we'll talk about in greater depth in just a little bit, learning different skills, academic skills, skills that could maybe lead them into certain professions in the future, learning their personal strengths, self-evaluation, kind of coming into their own as individuals, taking the development of that from the last stage and moving it even deeper into this current stage, and then team play. You see a lot of sports in this age group. So in terms of Erikson's theory, we're talking about industry versus inferiority. Can they create? Can they master something? Are they going to be considered, well, dunces? Are they going to be considered inferior to the rest of their social peers? So Erikson has this to say about this stage. The child has experienced a sense of finality regarding the fact that there is no workable future within the womb of his family. Basically, the child begins to move out of their home. It's not just about mom or dad anymore. It's not about, can I trust them to take care of me? They've come to that conclusion at this point. It's not about, consolidating themselves in their house, who they are and what they do within their house. They are now ready to venture forth into the big wide world, essentially. Erikson goes on in his Identity, Youth, and Crisis book to describe industry. While all children at times need to be left alone in solitary play or later in the company of books and radio, motion pictures and television, and while all children need their hours and days of make-believe and games, they all sooner or later become dissatisfied and disgruntled without a sense of being able to make things and make them well and even perfectly. It is this that I have called the sense of industry. Without this, even the best entertained child soon acts exploited. It is as if he knows and his society knows that now that he is psychologically already a rudimentary parent, he must begin to be something of a worker and potential provider before becoming a biological parent. He goes on to say, the danger at this stage is the development of an estrangement from himself and from his tasks, the well-known sense of inferiority. This may be caused by an insufficient solution of the preceding conflict. The child may still want his mommy more than knowledge. He may still prefer to be the baby at home rather than the big child in school. He still compares himself with his father, and the comparison arouses a sense of guilt as well as a sense of inferiority. Family life may not have prepared him for school life, or school life may fail to sustain the promises of earlier stages, in that nothing that he has learned to do well so far seems to count with his fellows or his teacher. And then again, he may be potentially able to excel in ways which are dormant and which, if not evoked now, may develop late or never. So this stage really brings with it a lot of potential. There's a lot of risk, though, as well. It's very socially oriented in that the child is no longer necessarily focused on what mom and dad think. Oh no, now it's much broader. Now it encompasses those around him or her, saying, what do my teachers think? What what do my classmates think? And so there's a lot more pressure on the child. And this can lead to a sense of inferiority, especially if the child is unable to meet the expectations of his peers or his evaluators, his authority figures. So let's talk about the various stages, or the various principles of this stage. The central process of this stage is education, passing on of knowledge, wisdom, standards, values, things of that nature. Passing them on and having the child retain them so that he or she can carry them on into the future as well. They're learning about new ways of doing things that they hadn't considered before. They're learning how to apply their knowledge. They're learning how to take the skills that they have gained and to, well, adaptive ego quality, to create, to feel competent. And they do this from those around them. It says neighborhood, but that essentially just is a reference to those around them in their immediate social situation. Teachers, peers, coaches, things like that. So, like I said, the adaptive ego quality is a development of a feeling of competence. Yes, I know how to do something. I can make, I can do. This stage takes the purpose and the initiative from the last stage and gives it another layer. It puts upon it a sense of, I can make something. It's not just, I'm going to go play a game to play a game. I'm playing a game to make friends, to win the title, to show that I can really do something with these physical skills that I'm developing. Unfortunately, the core pathology of this is inertia, a lack of drive, or a lack of motivation. If a child feels inferior, it's like learned helplessness. They don't want to place themselves into a situation where they may be embarrassed or looked down upon by their peers. And so they just don't move towards those situations. The principle of social order kind of plays off the education piece in that it's technical order. There is an order to things. If I do this and do this and do this, I can make this happen. Or if I use these particular tools and have this blueprint in hand, I can make something. You see a lot of kids at this age maybe playing with erector sets or building model cars that they can race, or learning how to create and maintain their bicycles or their roller skates or things of that nature. They are learning how to apply knowledge to have some end goal in mind. The ritualization and ritualism for this stage is formal versus formalism. Formal touches on that technical order. If I do this, this, and this happens. It's a formal way of doing something, a proper way, as it says. Whereas formalism is a perfectionistic approach to the world. It's an obsessive approach to the world, saying, I have to do something perfect, because if I don't, other people will look down upon me. If I don't do something 100%, or if I don't get 100% on a test, or win gold medal in something, my teammates, my coach, my parents, my teachers, all of these people will look down on me. I can't handle that. I have to do this perfect. And so formalism is the ritualism for this stage. And then John Gleason's take on this in terms of theological lessons is kind of his chapter on this is sort of mixed, because a child learns the value of works in this stage. They learn the importance of doing and doing for a purpose. But in terms of a theological relationship with God, we're all familiar with the dichotomy between faith and works. And John Gleason touches on that. He comes to the conclusion that that works are important, essentially. But also, of course, faith is important. And too much of one or the other, it has to be in a balance. But at this age, or in this particular stage of religious development for Gleason, it is a matter of works. Works take a precedence, or not precedence, a principal role. Excuse me. So, in terms of jobs or things that a child can do at this age, you've got a variety of things, and I'm not going to go over all of these. You can read. But these next 3 slides kind of touch on what you can expect your child to be able to do in this age group as they kind of progress from about age 7 to 10 or 11. And it goes from, basically taking out things and cleaning things and carrying things to more organized and planned out behaviors, such as choosing clothing, or polishing things, or sewing buttons, multi-stage tasks, things of that nature. And this just keeps getting more and more complex as they age. So they can bake things now. They can be home alone and not, and be expected to care for themselves without hurting themselves. Learning certain crafts and things of that nature. So let's talk a bit about Piaget's concrete operational stage. This stage is very much, concrete. It is not very abstract. It's not very gray. It's very black and white, very practical, very functional. There are rules, so let's follow the rules, and let's go by them, because we know that if we go by the rules, boom, 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 things will get done. And when we talked about the pre-operational stage, we showed the 3 mountains task. Well, at this age, and towards the end of the pre-operational stage, children will be able to take the perspective of another person. They'll be able to anticipate, okay, if I'm here, I see this. I know that there are other things on the other side of the mountain. So I can kind of say, okay, the person will be able to see this, this, and this. They're able to make those sorts of mental operations now. Additionally, they're able to do things such as concern. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. We'll give some examples. Classification is very easy at this stage. We talked about classification and categorization earlier, I think in the early childhood or maybe toddler age, in which they're able to kind of break things down based upon certain types or certain minor characteristics of something. So there's not just, a bird there. Oh, well, that's a mallard duck. It's a specific type of a duck. Then you have concrete combinatory skills. So they're able to put things together, but they may not be able to go into an abstract combination of them. So they may not be able to run through uh, terribly complex mental uh, combination or mental gymnastics that are required to say, if this happens, then this will happen, then that'll happen, boom, 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 and on down the line until this particular end sequence. It has to be like I follow these particular stages, okay? So let's talk a little bit about these. There, some more aspects. We've already touched on conservation and classification. What about seration? Children of this age are able to kind of put things along uh, based upon certain qualities, certain measurement or dimensional aspects of the object: depth, height, length, age, things of that nature. Number concepts for children at this age, numbers are concrete. They are invariant. So if you really want to blow a kid's mind, start talking about imaginary numbers and theoretical physics and stuff like that. Um, but numbers, they recognize the fact that numbers are not necessarily, they don't necessarily have to be, I have one finger, two fingers, three fingers. No, they can understand the concept of three without being able to, or without having to see three. So this is a seriation task in which the child would be tasked with saying, okay, point to the shortest stick, the second largest stick, the next, boom, 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 up along the length. And they're able to do that. They're also able to categorize and classify objects. So it's not necessarily that they would only choose these three triangles if they were said, okay, pick three triangles. Well, okay, then pick three other triangles. All right. They would be able to, if somebody came up to them and said, okay, pick the triangles that look like, this. Well, okay, they're able to say, all right, well, I can pick this one and this one and this one. Okay, that's good. Now pick the triangles that look like that. All right, well, that, and that. Great. Put them back up there. Now, I want you to pick all of the triangles, regardless of shape, regardless of size. Fine. Boom, 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 boom. Great. And they would go even more complex over time, and they would say things like, I want you to pick the triangle that is smaller than, I don't know, this, or smaller than that, or something of that nature. And it's kind of a test of intelligence, a test of reasoning and things of that nature, and they're able to reason out these sorts of abstract uh, rules and uh, orders. Pick this before this. Pick that and then that, or something of that nature. I feel like I described that very poorly, so if you have any questions, let me know. Conservation of substance. So imagine that they were shown a ball of clay, and somebody took that ball of clay and rolled it out into a snake. A child in the pre-operational stage would say, "Oh, there's more clay now, that it's longer." But children at this age, they're able to conserve and understand that the mass of the clay does not change, or the amount of the clay does not change. Same thing with number. A child in the pre-operational stage would say that this had more pennies because it's longer, whereas this had less pennies. Well, it's the same number of pennies. One of them's just spread out more. Same thing here. we've already talked. I believe I gave the example a couple weeks ago about this task. Pouring uh, one glass of water into a taller flask, and a pre-operational child would say, "Oh, there's more water in this flask than there is in that." I doubt they would know the term flask, but anyway. Um, Whereas a concrete operational child would be able to conserve and say, "Oh, well, it's the same amount of liquid." So, types of conservation, there is a predictable order in which children develop conservation. And it starts from liquid quantity to number to length to mass to area. Over time, they develop these different abilities to be able to conserve the amount. Um, and this is a freebie, you won't be tested on this, but this is known as horizontal decollage. Um, and it's a predictable pattern of cognitive abilities. So let's talk briefly here about Piaget's moral developmental stages. Now, I don't want you to get confused with the because he uses similar terms as pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. But instead of sensory motor, there's a pre-operational. There are two pre-operationals. Okay, so you've got the pre-operational 2 to 4. You've got the pre-operational 4 to 6. Then you've got concrete and formal operations. The pre-operational 2 to 4 is characterized by an egocentric morality. It's kind of they don't have a sense of right or wrong. It's called dual moral inadequacy. Basically, rules don't really matter. They are kind of like very selfish in how they do things. They'll take something from someone else if they want it and really not care about the consequences. The authoritarian pre-operational stage, though, very much is very much like Kohlberg's stage 1 and 2. And these are the ideas that there are authority figures and that I'm going to be punished or rewarded based upon my actions. Now, this is very pre-operational in their age group. This technically is in the pre-operational age group, 4 to 6. So rules are outside of the self. They're kind of arbitrary. They don't really have a beginning or end. They just are. Therefore, we do them. Okay. Um, Concrete operational or the reciprocal moral developmental stage is sort of a do unto others, do what's fair, do what's right. This is the concrete operational stage where we're in right now. Okay. Um, so they're very concerned with rules, fairness. Um, Jimmy stole the base, and that's not right. Well, actually, yeah, he can steal a base. Oh, really? Oh, okay, great. Um, or Jimmy knocked somebody over while he was stealing the base. Well, he can't do that. That's not right. Yeah, let's go get him. You know, um, and they very much police the rules. Anybody who has kids in this age group knows this. Um, Whereas in the formal operational, or also known as the equity cooperation stage, this is where this kind of corresponds, by the way, to Kohlberg's stages 3 and 4. This kind of corresponds to 5 and 6. Um, it's not a one-to-one comparison, so don't think of it like that. I'm just trying to kind of help organize this in your mind. So anyway, the equity cooperation stage, uh, it kind of refers to morals coming out of consent Mutual consent is sort of democratic. So I guess this could also be considered more along the lines of Kohlberg's conventional stages. But this aspect, the rules based on compassion and considering the feelings of the person involved, very much kind of moves on into stages 5 and 6. So this kind of goes into maybe stages 4, 5, and 6 of Kohlberg's theory. But again, not a one-to-one comparison. So let's talk about theories of intelligence. There are a couple of theories that we were wanting to talk about today. The first one is Gardner's theory. And in your discussion board, there should be a video of Gardner talking about his theory of intelligence. But Gardner basically rejected the idea of the fact that the field of psychology used to say that there was only maybe a couple of types of intelligence, and they measured it based upon things like working memory, processing speed, the ability for a person to kind of a visually processing intelligence, and then a verbally processing of intelligence. Gardner took and went way beyond that, saying that people had skills and intelligence in a variety of different areas, from music to spatial stuff to movement, knowing how to talk to a person, interpersonal intelligence, mathematical intelligence, just a whole lot of different types of intelligence. And his concept really kind of flipped psychology on a traditional understanding of intelligence on its head. And so now you're seeing a lot more research into different types of intelligence. I mean, there's research now into spiritual intelligence. We've heard of things like emotional intelligence, things like that. So this is just kind of a description of different types of his proposed intelligence, like spatial, musical, ability to produce sounds at high pitches, varying pitch, the interpersonal ability to identify feelings, we would call that emotional intelligence, motivations and the intentions of others, things like that. So just be familiar with kind of what the different intelligences are, and they're pretty self-explanatory. But Sternberg came up with a different theory of intelligence. He called it the triarchic model. And this has three components: the componential, the experiential, and the contextual. And these three stages have different aspects to each. So the first one, the componential, is very computational, very analytical, very much, okay, what's the process of completing this task? What are the rules here? Then you have the experiential. That's very emotionally based, very familiar, insight based. It's phenomenological in nature. Then you have the contextual, which refers to how practical, how we deal with practical things like mechanical work or things like that. All right. But it also refers to things like how relevant is the task and how to deal with different aspects of the working environment to make those tasks occur and come to fruition. And this is just basically a visual example of what Sternberg's triarchic model is. So really, you can't have one without the other, too. You have to be able to conceptualize something and, figure out its relevance and how you can kind of make things happen to get the thing done before, you can kind of develop a familiarity with it, or maybe you're taking the familiarity that you have already developed with certain things and applying it to the creation of something. Let's talk a little bit about peer relationships in middle childhood. There are different types of play: cognitive play, social play. In terms of cognitive play, you can kind of see the development of the child operationally. So functional play is things like the um, circular reactions that we talked about. I think way back in lecture 2, um, where they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, simple, repeated. Constructive play is very much sort of taking something and maybe throwing a ball on the ground, or squeezing a ducky or something of that nature. So that's maybe toddler age. Dramatic or make believe, that's early childhood, maybe late toddlerhood, where they kind of are moving into the pre-operational stages, where they've kind of developed that linguistic ability and they're able to conceptualize the world in symbols or make believe nature. And then you have games with rules. And that's what we're kind of talking about today, is the concrete rules, the fairness that kids in this stage are so apt to cite. And then you have different levels of social play. The unoccupied, solitary, and the onlooker play characterize stages of, I'd say, infancy, toddlerhood, and um, maybe early child, infancy and toddlerhood, I would say. Um, Also, parallel play kind of comes into that nature, where they will play next to each other with the same toys, but won't really interact with one another. Then you have associative play. That's early childhood, where you start saying, okay, do you like dinosaurs? I like dinosaurs. Let's play together, and uh, but one kid will be saying, oh, there's a dinosaur, and he's up on a mountaintop, and there's another dinosaur, and the other kid's saying that his dinosaur is going to go over here and eat something or other, and it's kind of disorganized play. But they are playing with one another. Then you have cooperative play, and that's where sports come in, and a shared goal is created there. So friendships in childhood, in preschool child age, and so probably around you know young early childhood, um, or toddler age, that's based upon common interests. You like dinosaurs? I like dinosaurs. Cool, let's play. We're friends. But as kids grow, they develop a sense of, okay, I'm looking for something deeper. I'm looking for something more long lasting. I'm looking for a buddy, somebody I can trust, um, and kind of developing friendships based upon that sense of connection. In terms of clinical, spiritual, and multicultural applications, think about things such as children and violence, exposure to violence. How does this impact a child's ability to uh, put themselves out there? Does a fear of being bullied, for instance, prevent them from joining the school sports team? Or a fear of, oh, Bruno over there, he beat up the last kid that showed his intelligence. Well, I'm just gonna, fly under the radar in class then, so that I can protect myself. And they develop a sense of inferiority based upon that, and they inertia and just a downward spiral. What about things like, well, Gleason's question about theological faith and works? Does a child in this age group, do they have sort of a sense of I'm safe through faith? Or do they feel like they have to work and do things and uh, help others or earn it, earn their salvation? What do they what do you think about children joining youth groups at this age? Do you feel like it is a necessary thing that you would recommend to them if a parent brought a child to you for therapy? What about things like, oh, yeah, cultural bias and IQ? There's been a lot of research into this, but it's still a necessary area of study because there are a lot of cultures, and we've kind of we kind of like to apply our norms to other cultures, but that may not necessarily be helpful in understanding. Okay, well, uh, maybe they don't have words that are the same in their culture. Maybe they don't value memory, or maybe they value memory more than our culture. I don't know. What about parental differences? How parents treat their children at this age group? Does that impact their sense of inferiority or industry? What about cultures that overemphasize industry to the point where if a child does fail, they're they're ostracized from their community? A lot of pressure. Things to consider. So there are actually two lectures to week 6. I'm going to be loading these separately. Um, the next lecture is going to be on Fowler's faith stages and the first couple of stages in his model. So I hope to see you there. All right. Thank you all for watching, and good studies.